MuleSoft Meetup. Today, the topic for the meetup is the secure configuration properties. Let's. So I'll start with my introduction. So I'm Trituja Gupta. I'm working as a consultant at Capgemini Bangalore, and I'm a certified MuleSoft developer. Along with that, I also contribute as a MuleSoft mentor and a MuleSoft meetup leader for this Lucknow meetup group. So, Abhishek, would you like to go forward?
Tuja, thank you so
Yeah.
much. First of all, welcome everyone. And first of all, Diana, thank you so much for accepting our invite and joining with us today with this topic. Myself, Abhishek, I'm working as an associate solution architect in Apicero. I have an overall of 6.5 years of experience, out of which 4 years in MuleSoft. I'm MuleSoft mentor. I'm certified developer architect, and I make YouTube videos. I'm a meetup speaker, and I host a Guwahati and Lucknow meetup. So thank you so much.
Okay. Akib, I think he is not here, but yeah, he is also the one of the organizer. So I'll move forward. So the main thing, the speaker of our event. Yeah. So we all know her. Her digital name is tech name is Digital D, and it's Diane. So Diane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. If you, I am presently a MuleSoft certified instructor. I contract in with MuleSoft and teach the fundamental developer course, and I'm also soon to be teaching the Architect Application Networks course as well. That is coming up this coming month. I am happy to be a MuleSoft mentor. Was recognized as a mentor when the program first kicked off, and now we have quite a few other mentors. And it's a great environment to be in to ask questions. We, as mentors, we are there to help you. Um, I am fully certified in MuleSoft, and I did that through the Meetup program. I was not affiliated with a company when I first started. So by presenting at meetups, hint, hint, I'm hinting to you all, by presenting at meetups, you are gifted with a instructor-led course and a certification. Now, we will be giving some of those away during the trivia as well, but do know that that's how I was fully certified. I just kept being involved in the community, and that's how I worked my it was like my scholarship program, if you will. And but I some of them came rather easy, some of them came very hard. I was really challenged by a few of them. So I encourage those of you that are challenged by a certification just to dig in and keep going from there. I'm presently a meetup leader for Oklahoma City, which is where I'm working on a state contract there. And so I work as well as teach, and I'm new to the healthcare meetup, which is a newer meetup that we're going to be kicking off to as well. So great to be here. Thank you all for inviting me to be here. I'm excited to share the material that we're going to be talking about today.
Thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to have you here. And thank you so much for accepting this invite. It's really a pleasure for us. So,
And me too. Know that. Yes.
yeah. Now we'll forward with the safe harbor statement. I'll let you go through this. So, both the speakers and the host are organizing this meetup in individual capacity only. We are not representing our companies here. This presentation is strictly for learning purpose only. Organizers or presenter do not hold any responsibility that same solution will work for your business requirements. This presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. Now I'll give you some of the heads up what we will be doing after this meetup group. So we are going to record the session, and that will be uploaded within 24 hours in the meetup page. We are going to make it more interactive. We have You can ask as many questions as you can, and the most important thing that matters to us is the feedback, and it's a bread and butter. So just feel free to give us the feedback at the end of the day. So yeah, let's get started with the secure configuration properties. I'll hand it over to you, Diane.
Okay. 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Yes.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, the material that I'll be covering today is really at the level two developer material, but it is things that we need day in and day out as far as doing our jobs. So I wanted to be sure that we covered things that will be usable. And of course, if you are still at the level one developer studying, this is going to give you a jump ahead, not only in your material, but help you to get a fuller understanding of some of the principles that we're talking about when we are setting up our applications. Because, we, especially in the, I believe it's module 7, where we really start talking about best practices and structuring your application a certain way. There's a reason for that. And so as we move forward into the developing, you saw my beach there, didn't you? Into the developing part, we are going to be talking about configuring our application first. So what I'm going to do is show you the application that I have used in Studio for this entire presentation, and I want you to be familiar with it. It's something that is in the level one developer course. You remember that we did the listener, we queried a Salesforce uh, the Salesforce database, and we got our information back from our, and transformed the data received. I'm waking up, Era. It's a little bit early. Hang on a second. I'll get my brain working here. So essentially, what we're doing here is we are just calling with an HTTP listener the accounts, querying this database, and getting data back from that account's database. And you'll notice here I have already set up a global.xml file to use for our two flows. The second flow is very familiar. Again, we're using the listener to call our get American flights. Now, remember in our course that we created this RAML specification, and we are using it now as a connector to connect our to the American database to go ahead and get flights back from that database. So again, I used applications so that it's easily repeatable for you to understand. If you want to recreate this, you can do that based on what you're seeing in the flows here. So in our global.xml, I have set up our global elements here. I'll be referencing these. And so I'm going to give you demo and presentation back and forth. This one is set up according to best practices, except for our the name of our application here would more than likely have been implementation, so that you can kind of get an idea of the interface implementation reference to whether it's an API or whether it's the implementation. So in our application configuration, one of the first things we need to do is to create a YAML file for each environment. And that is going to be in our source main resources folder. So as I have already done here. Now, what I did is I did create a folder to put all of my configuration files in. So I'll show you how to create that folder, and then I added individual YAML files for each environment. And you'll notice I have the local YAML files. I have the dev environment, test environment. I did not add prod to this yet, but you get the idea that you have a separate YAML file for each of your environments. So to do that, just quickly to show you, this is the second version of Studio running here. This is the one I'm going to play with and add some things to so that our demo looks good. In the source main resources, you'll notice this one doesn't have that file. Now, you don't have to have a folder if you don't want. I like to organize it as a folder. I do think that, it's good. We do this in the work environment so that it has everything organized nicely. So right click on source main resources, new, drop down to folder. And this is where I'm going to, you can, again, this is not a reserved field. This is whatever I want to call it. I could call it config files and then finish. So it creates this folder for me. And then in here, I'll come back in and do new, come down to file. And this is where I'm going to name it whatever I would like. Now, we're going to be using some placeholders that we are going to be able to change out and access the name of the environment. So we want to have a file, a YAML file for every environment that we're going to be accessing. So that's why, if you'll notice, I have the config.local.yaml. And that's what we want to do. Now, the config word here again is just for our purposes of keeping making our name meaningful. So the first one I'm going to do is config local YAML, and then it creates the file. I'm not going to go through and do each of these. This is why I have one already done, because it's going to save us a little time. But I just wanted you to see the process of doing this. And of course, then too, we want to have a YAML file for our secured files as well. So we're going to do config local.secure.yaml. And then we will add some data here in each of these as we go along. Okay. And if you have questions, I can't see the chat, so someone let me know if there are questions along the way. So, okay.
Sure, I will let you know if there will be any question.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. So we have gone through the first process to show you how to do that. And then we're going to add configuration to those files. Now, you'll notice that I have the config local.yaml and I have the config local.secure.yaml. And this is intended that our config local.yaml is going to have fields in it that are not secure, that are pretty, will have maybe even URLs possibly. But this is going to be where we have our API ID, we have our ports identified for our public and private ports, and again, URLs possibly for other connections, etc. So that's what's going to be in our config local YAML. Then in our config local secure YAML, we're going to have things that are going to be sensitive information. Now, right now, this is a big no-no. You see that we have information for our password, token, our username, password. Well, username is not so sensitive, but passwords are sensitive. Secret is sensitive. So we want these to be secured. We want these to be going forward. We don't want to leave plain text there. We want to have them encrypted. So that's our direction that we're heading in. But this is where we get started. And then, like, basically in our application, you can see by looking at our local here, I already have our API ID in the local environment. It is 0 because we don't access the API ID within our local environment. But in our HTTP port, etc., both of those are set and ready to go. In dev, I did get our API ID that we had created when we published that to Exchange, and we created that instance by adding the proxy to that API. So we do have our ports listed as well. But in the secure environment, as I showed you before, we have our password token and our client secrets now are encrypted, which I'll show you how to do that. But this is where this data would be stored in our config local secure YAML file in each of the environments, dev as well, dev and test. And I've got a typo there. Huh. So I'll show you how to fix a typo. Let's refactor and rename that one. And that should be secure. So just by changing the name there, click OK. And that refactors my typo there. So, hey, throw in an extra little thing there. but but anyway, you get how we have this configured. That's why I like to have it headed under its own folder, so that all of the details, when another developer comes behind me and they locate that folder, they know that that's where they can find all of the details that they need for each of the environments. Now, the our next step is, so first of all, like I said, create our YAML files. And There are, you can locate details on exactly how to do much of this in docs.mulesoft.com. We need to now create our global elements that reference these files. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to use our property placeholders and our global configurations. So you will see when we set up that YAML file, we're going to use the property placeholder in our HTTP listener. So we'll go to global, we'll go to our HTTP listener, and this is what we're talking about. This is where the HTTP dot port is referencing our local config file here. Come on, don't freeze. There we go. Okay, so it's referencing our HTTP port ID here. So for those of you who are experiencing this, you understand completely how this works. However, for those of you that are still grasping the concept of this, that the upper level key name is HTTP, then dot port is referenced in our global. So you can see that that would be what is referenced and the syntax that you need for that to reference that global element. Okay, so we have our property placeholders. Let's also look at our Salesforce configuration. Here are the property placeholders used here. They're a little different. We'll talk about that shortly. And in the American flights, we also have them detailed out. So the syntax for that is $ curly bracket with the name of your key. Both levels, you'll notice American.host again is the American dot host, so it's referencing that value here. Okay, moving forward. So you'll notice the HTTP dot port. Then we're going to create, we have to add our global property that will set our environment keyword. So we'll go to our application here, the one that's not configured yet. And I'm going to create a mule configuration called global. And this is where I'm going to put all of our global configurations that we create. So we're going to go to global elements and we want to create a global configuration that's going to be a configuration property. Click OK. Ah, nope, my mistake. Sorry. Configuration. A global property configuration. There we go. Okay, so what this is going to do, this is giving us a global property. And we are saying that for the key name of ENV, which is again not a reserved field, but a recommended field to use for others to understand in the industry, that that's an environment variable that we're going to be accessing, whether it be local, dev, test, or prod, or whatever the names of your environments are. And in this case, we're going to set the value to local because we are working locally through this. We're going to do local. And so there we now have gotten our local environment set. And then we're going to create our configuration properties for our config.yaml. This is going to be for our where we're pointing it to that location. So again, we're going to create global configurations, configuration properties, and click OK. Now this is where we want to point it to that file. We want to point it to the config.yaml file. Let me grab this one real quick.
Dinah, like
Yes.
Gazanand has this doubt, like why we have two different properties, like one is for secure and one is for normal, and now to call it out, like how we will call it out, like how we'll call the secure property and how we'll call the normal one. So like the one which
Okay.
we are showing now, configuration properties and secure property placeholder. So that one, can you explain once again?
Yes, I can. So the question, let me make sure I understand. The question is, let me get back to that screen I was just on. There we go. We have the two environments. One is less protected. The config local YAML is less protected. It's going to have our fields in it that are not encrypted. So that one will be the, because if you have all of them in one place, you will get warnings that you want to make sure that all of your values in a secured file are encrypted, etc. So we split them out. It's not 100%. You'll see that we have basic generic unencrypted items that are easy to access in the config.local.yaml file. And that's the one that we are setting right now. We're telling the global element that we are going to look for that file in this location. So I'll talk about that one first, and then I'll go into details as we go forward too on the local secure. Okay. So the first one is to locate the values that are not as secure. It is the local.yaml. That's where we're going to find our API ID. We're going to find our port numbers and things that are not as sensitive, the URLs that we might want to use for other applications that we might want to connect with, or connectors that are not protected with a password. So that this is how the global element will know where to reference those values. Okay, so we'll click OK here. Then, so this completes the config local YAML setup. We have our environment variable set up. We have we're pointing to this file right here. Notice the file structure, config file, and then the name of the file is config with our variable identified here, which in this case is going to be local. Okay. And next I will explain about the secure. So we have completed this here. And to do our secure fields, we need to add our global element dependency. So we have to bring in a dependency into Studio. And let me grab this one. So we have Studio here. And where you would locate this is to search an exchange and type in secure. And you will see an option come up in available modules, which is the Mule Secure Configuration Property Extension. Okay, so we will use this to add to our application. So click and add, and it's already added to mine. I'm just showing you the process. And once it is added, it will appear as secured properties in your palette. Once you go to your secured properties, then you can, let me get our presentation back. Okay, so we added our secure property config. And next we're going to create the secure properties configuration. Now this is where the application and Mule will know where to find those secure values. So we have two levels. We've got the first level that's unsecured, things that are not sensitive, and then we have our second level that is going to have our encrypted values in it. And again, like I said, it's not 100%, not all the fields in there are going to be 100% encrypted, but there's a way that we will use to let our application know that that is in the secured folder. So we're going to configure the secure properties next. Okay, so in our global, I have already created the secure properties config. What you would do is create this as a new, so create, and then we would point to that same folder again, but this time we're going to add the secure.yaml extension so that we are pointing to the secure.yaml file, and our key is going to be a key value that we place and that we make up for our mule key. That's the encryption key. Then you also want to have your your algorithm that is set and your CBC that is set that will coincide with the values that you use to encrypt these yourself. So this is important to make sure that you use the same encryption for both of these, or I should say the same algorithm and mode that you're going to use when you actually encrypt those values, because we're setting that here. Okay. And so I'm slowly answering those questions through this process. But after we have this added, we configured our secure property configuration and our global elements. And you can see we're pointing now to that secure file. As you see here, there's the connection to the local secure.yaml file. Now we're going to use the property placeholders to address and select those values. Just like we did in the unsecured one, we did not have this prefix of the word secure. That is another way that will point the to our secured file, to our secure.yaml file. Notice that secure precursor. So we're going to create our configuration properties. Those two values will need to be encrypted. And let me go back to Studio and show you when we are in our local secure.yaml file here. We will be encrypting some of these values here. And when we use these values in our application, so here we see the password and token and are encrypted, but the username is not encrypted. However, in our actual application here, in our global element, nope, sorry, in our application here, when we reference this, bear with me. There we go. When we reference this, we need that secure precursor. We need that secure prefix. Even though this one is not, the username is not encrypted, it still needs that secure prefix to know that it is referencing our local secure.yaml file. So does that answer the questions? That's the difference in, how the application or how Mule Runtime will know where to pull that data. One is coming from a lesser secure, or I should say unsecured in some ways, and the other is coming from the secure. Did that answer the questions in regards to that? How will we know which ones to use?
Yes, Diana, that was answered.
Okay. All right. So going forward, um, what we want
Diana,
to,
sorry
yes.
to interrupt you in between.
No.
I thanks a lot for explaining all the stuff. And so one more question is to always separate the properties values in different files that we are something that
uh,
we have to in secure way we have what do you suggest on that, like if we use
I
that
do
standards. Hmm.
um I do suggest it. I have seen it in the work that I have done. It's also supported in our materials that we teach. So it is, the C4E at your organization would drive that decision and make that call as to exactly, how you want to organize what is standard for your facility, for your location and for your enterprise. But this is best practice, or it's what we teach. It's what I see also in production environments. So yes, you will see that in both of the environments as far as the local the uh, .yaml, and it can also be referenced as .properties, but and having the more secure one that's available too. So
Yeah, thank you so much, Diana. One more question. Is there any performance advantage we have if we are using a local ones and we have to filter out where we are not to use the secure stuff, right? So might be this is very applicable or suitable for the small configurations, but if we have a suppose a large file, so it very tedious task for the developers to differentiate, and it will be ping pong stuff, like some stuff will be in the local and some stuff in the so it will be very difficult for the developers to track and to
Yes.
navigate the path as well. So for the larger file, I believe like it will be more difficult to put the navigations and all. So how to manage it, and what you suggest, like because uh, right now the best practices we are using is like we are using one file, okay?
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, like even though for the secure file, if you are not using the you are not encrypting it that particular values, you still need to use secure, okay? So if
Yes.
we are
Yes.
using that practices, it will impact in the performance issue or performances or not, or for the application.
I don't think that there's any performance differences on that. I'm trying to get these two side by side. There we go.
Hmm.
I don't think that there is. I think that it's just more a matter of organizing the files more so. I stick close to what we teach for the sake of promoting, what
Hmm.
is what we see as best. But as far as performance, the only thing that would be, adding a little more performance to an encryption, the encryption process is the encryption decryption, and that you're
Hmm.
going to have anyway. So I don't know if it would hinder that in any way. It's just more of an organizational thing. And what we also put in the config.local is some of the URLs that are not secure, and various things, like we put some of our Splunk logging in here. We also put um, yes, I think you can, there's not a restriction against just using the one, because as we, as you mentioned, as we can already see, username is not going to be encrypted, DB host is not going to be encrypted, so there's going to be values in here that aren't.
Right. And then
Yeah.
one more problem is like if we have a two files, let's suppose we are using a CI/CD process. Okay, so we are passing the environment parameters through some sort of environment, like dynamically we are passing. So we are not using the global parameter in that case. So in that case, might be these two files create a problem for us because we have to send one parameter in that stuff. So might be in that
Yeah.
point also we have to very careful what we are passing in the parameter. So that's why I'm just asking in the
Yeah.
performance point of view, if any performance will enhance that, then definitely the approaches that you define, that is perfectly we have to use it. If it is not
Hmm.
create any problem, might be we can use the single file, and because single file managing all the things, and you will see the root element will be there, and we can have a multiple child field,
Hmm.
right? So we can
Hmm.
easily identify this is belong to what root, right? But in the
Yes.
two different files, might be it will be different what we can say, the structure. So
Yes.
that's why
Yes.
it will create more confusion for the developer as well, or might be the reviewer as well. Like sometimes you are using short name and sometimes you are using long name because of the structure, right?
True. Very
So
true.
that's why
Yes.
that's, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and great points. That's right. And that's why, when once again, when we have information, and that how it applies to your environment, how it applies to how you're going to best use it, is going to be unique for each environment. And once a pattern is set that works well for you, like you're saying, then that's, going to be how you want to set that standard for your environment that you're working in, for your enterprise.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So you
Thank you.
can do either or. Yes. But to
It,
go if you're aiming for certification, this is what you're going to see some of these principles more in the certification realm. And again, that's where a lot of times too, as instructors will say, okay, I'm going to put my hat on that I'm putting on for instructing in a uh, for certification based, and this is what you want to be focused on. When I switch over to my production hat, to my, what we actually do hands on, this is kind of how we do it. So it's a great example right there, and that,
Right.
the differences between the two.
And Dana, you explained it very well, and everybody, I hope everybody get the clear picture in the basic level, as well as the advanced level. You already explained it, and thank you so much for your explanation. I really
Oh,
appreciate
sure.
it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So here we have our the password, and our token is not encrypted. This is not a good thing. We want to get those secured. As you can see, we have several things here that are not secure. We do not want to have, open text for values that are sensitive. So we're going to use our secure properties tool to set this up. Now this is the secure properties tool is in our um, documentation with MuleSoft. Let me grab that real quick for you and put that in the chat. So if you want to get familiar with where this is located, if you've never done the encryption before,
I already
and
shared it, Dana.
great, thank you. Okay, wonderful. All right, so we want to go there and we want to download the secure properties tool jar file. Um, and then we're going to, I recommend creating a separate folder. Mine's on my desktop, so I can get to it really easily. And you want to place that secure properties tool download in that folder. I have a handy encrypt command uh, sheet that I use too that has let me get that off, that has the encryption command here that I'll share with you the details on that. So once you place the properties tool jar file in that folder, open up a command prompt. So we will go to, once in the folder that you created, then you're going to open up a command prompt and be ready to enter in any of the commands that you are going to use to encrypt. Now there's two different ways to encrypt. So there is the command prompt for that. You must have Java installed on your system. Most of us as developers do, but if you have an issue with this, check on your Java installation. Studio is now doing an embedded. When you download Studio, we used to have to install Java separately. It's now an embedded Java. So you might not actually have Java installed. So you do want to make sure you have Java installed to do this. And now to use this, you want to first, of course, at your environment, request the mule key that for each environment. Now the mule key will be separate per environment. It should be separate per environment. The level 2 course for that covers this material does use the same key for each environment, and it's kind of a little misleading. You absolutely want to have a separate key per environment. Now we use local, and dev uses the same key because you're testing locally and then it's going into development. That's not a problem. In test and prod, you do want to use a separate mule key for that. So the um, the commands to secure these values are listed out as I was starting to show you here. You can also see it at the docs.mulesoft.com, but all of these commands are referencing what we want to do, whether we are encrypting or decrypting. So you can also use this to decrypt. Here is the Blowfish CBC. Remember, we saw that in our global configuration, and I pointed that out, that whatever you set it for in your global elements is what you need to send in as your command. Then you're going to enter the mule key value here. And this is going to be whatever your value is that you receive for your mule encryption key, and then whatever the value is you want to encrypt. So this will go into the parentheses so that you have the actual value that you're going to encrypt. As you see here, this is the value that I wanted encrypted. This is the key, and then it will, when we are doing a single value, you can do it directly in the command prompt, and it returns to you the encrypted value immediately. So this is very handy if you're just needing a single value to be encrypted. and it will give you the output right there in the command prompt. Now, if you are wanting to encrypt properties inside of a file, or if you are wanting to do multiple values, then you can create a file input.yaml or whatever you want to name that input.yaml file. That is not a reserved field there, in which case you would list the values that you want to encrypt. And again, the command for this is going to be very similar in that you have the mule key value, and instead of putting the value you want encrypted in parentheses like we did before, we're going to identify the input file and the output file that exists in the folder where the secure properties tool is saved. So as we will have the input value there, or the input file there, and it's going to create the output file. So in that output file, we will find our encrypted values. Now, a nice little shortcut that you can do is to put your copy your config.yaml file as your input, remove any files that you don't want to have encrypted, and then it will create all of the output for you. So it's a handy tool to go ahead and do that. Let's do a presently I have, let's see what is in my input file here. I have an input file already here. Okay, so what I was doing is I was creating any of the sensitive data. Now, client secret 1 can just remain client secret. We can take this one out. Okay, so what I did is I took the files I wanted to have encrypted for our application, and I have them all in the input file. I'm going to save this, and let me get my command here. I'll put that in the command prompt here, and I have that input and output, and the key that I've used, the value of the mule dot key is called this is the key. So just keeping it simple. So you can see that I have put the command in, just hit enter. It returns back with another command prompt, and then you can look at your output. And you see you get return values of each of them encrypted. Now the syntax for the encryption is going to be exclamation point, square bracket, and then it closes square bracket. Okay, so we have the syntax for the that you want to remember, exclamation, square bracket. Then inside of that is our encrypted value for each of the password token, password client secret. Then I went back to Studio and added those values here. Okay, so each one is added there. Any questions on that? So then once you add your encrypted values, then you save it. And we have gotten everything set up in our application for the configuration portion. So we want to encrypt our values. You will see how the encryption was per each sensitive value is now saved in our YAML file, and it's encrypted. And that's the way we want to go with that. Then to test it locally in Studio, we have to add our encryption key to our run configuration file. Now this is running locally, and then when you deploy, we'll also talk about passing that key. CI/CD pipelines, that key would also be in, we recommend it being in a either a key vault or a secured location for that key to be passed through. But in run configurations, we're going to add the mule key to Studio so that we can run it locally. So you will come to the run configurations in Studio, and in the environments, You can also pass it as an argument. That's another way of doing it. In the environment, we added the mule key. And so per environment, you would want to add the mule key as it's deploying going through. So this is the key. What I used for this example is saved in our run environment. Now it will run locally. Not sure what I did to save anything there. And you will be able to see that all of the fields that are encrypted work perfectly because it is running and using the encryption key to decrypt the values that we have saved in our in our local secure .yaml file. So all of these values here that are encrypted will be decrypted as we are running each of the applications. Now, as it's deploying, another thing that we'll do is we will I have already uh, deployed this in cloudhub as well, because I do want to talk about runtime manager. But real quickly, I'll show you. So once you have all of the configurations set, you do want to run your application again to make sure that all of your decrypting, encrypting is working as it should. And yeah, there we go. Okay, American. And we are getting flight data back. And then also I have that set to, I believe, accounts. And we're getting account data back. So we know that our encryption decryption process is working throughout our application because it's able to pull that encrypted value, decrypt it, and use it in our to access each of the endpoints that we have those values encrypted for. Okay. Then once deployed to CloudHub, we also want to make sure that we have masked those values. In the runtime manager, once deployed, we see that in the properties tab, our mule key is easily visible. So we want to mask that information. We want it not to show. So the way to do that is to add the secure properties with the key names to the mule artifact.json file in our application. And it's just very simple to add the secure properties with the name of the keys. It can be it's a list of different key names that you want to mask. Redeploy your application to CloudHub, and then it will come up in that tab where it is masked, as you see. And that's what we want. We want to have that where it is not visible for eyes to pry into what we're doing. That file is located down here, mule artifact.json. Click open the mule artifact JSON. You can see that I put mule key there. Any other values that might show in CloudHub that you want to mask like that can be added here as well. Okay. And that concludes the demo presentation part. I will go ahead and any questions on anything that we covered or that I can be helpful for on any of that?
Dina. So like I have one question like thanks to Kalyani for bringing this point. Like we need one clarification. So like now suppose we have a secured YAML and we have a normal YAML or a secure property and a normal properties. So uh, the properties which are not, can that be accessed without using secure keyword? Because Kalyani says like she tried that with dot properties file, and the properties which are not encrypted, even it is defined with secure property placeholder. So the property which are not secured, she was able to access that using not using the secure keyword. So is it
Oh,
like,
she was?
yeah? So Kalyani, would you
Yeah.
like to speak on that? Do you have mic access? Yeah, you have. So you can put your question, you can unmute and you can ask if you want.
So you're
Because
saying that in the
so like
global element. Let's
Yeah,
use
like
the Salesforce. We'll use the Salesforce one.
hmm.
And so you're saying that this did not, the precursor did not need to be here.
Yeah, if it is not encrypted, then
Yeah,
Let's
hi
try.
Dayan and Abhishek. Actually, in
yeah.
our project, we are using dot properties file, not dot YAML. So
Hmm.
we placed all the secure and unsecure same file, and I'm able to access those unencrypted properties without using the secure colon prefix.
Okay, let's check that. I
Yeah.
just removed it. I don't know if you saw what I did, but I just removed, not there, in the global. I just removed it from here, right? So let's see, because all the others, the two that are encrypted have the secure prefix, and this one does not, and it because it's not encrypted. So let's see, let's save it and see if it will deploy and run. We'll give it a minute to do that. But yeah, great point. I have always been instructed to, to instruct others to use it, but that doesn't mean that that's always the way it works. And from version to version too, there are sometimes things that happen in a certain version and changes, as you know. Okay, look,
Correct.
deployment failed. I removed the secure name, and look, the key SFDC username. Did I set that up the way you intended?
She
No,
tried with dot properties, like not with
yeah,
dot YAML. She tried with dot properties file.
Oh, got you. Okay, well,
Yeah,
it may work with dot properties as opposed to dot YAML. The way this one is set up is the dot YAML, but you wouldn't think that there would be that much of a difference between the two. And what we're talking about, folks, is let me bring this up in the, so I'll have to try that out. I'll have to try that out. In the encryption piece where we're talking about secured configuration properties, the URL that was sent earlier, um, it is discussed here that you can use the .yaml or the .properties. And what you're saying is the .properties allows you to not put the secure prefix, right?
yes.
And the YAML obviously is requiring. So that's good to know. I will love to change mine out and test it out that way too. But yeah, good to know. Good to know. So, and it may be because of it being spring formatted that allows that variance. It doesn't require that secure prefix. Yep. Good point. Good point. So if you're using .yaml as opposed to .properties, you do want to make sure that you've got the secure prefix for any of the files that exist or any of the values that exist in the secure .yaml files. Again, if you're using the .properties, and that's different. Great point. Love it. This is how we learn. Everybody can kind of contribute and share.
Uh, Diana, I believe it will behave the same that YAML file will behave because it's all about the extension, but the process behind it will be same because you are securing something. If you secure one field, you have to put the secure because how it will treat your file, and that's why
Okay,
you
yeah.
come up. Yeah, no, and that's why you come up with the separate files. So that's how you can separate it. So if even if in one file you have one field you have encrypted, you have to it will create treat as a secure file. It will not
Mhm.
treat as a line by line. It will treat the complete file as a secure, and then you have to definitely use the key,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Otherwise,
Diane, yeah, sorry,
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, but I have one question to Kalyani also, that has she included in the global elements secure properties config? If she is not doing that, that can be a case that she is able to access the properties file.
Now I do have a secure properties config that's pointing to the secure YAML file.
Yes, we are having that configuration.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a nice thing
So
to know.
yeah. Did yours in using the dot properties?
Uh, It
we
should
can
not
try
be
that.
accessible.
We can try. Like
Yeah.
I tried with dot properties, but I'm not really remembering that. I might and it failed there also, but we can check it again.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
a good point to
Let's do
see.
a follow up. And you know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we could
Yeah.
do too in the when it's posted in YouTube, let's do a conversation down below that to do follow up on this for sure. Because you know this is how we learn. This is what we can do to see how it works in different set with the different setups. I'm going to try. I will flip this over to dot properties and test it out that way and see our results on that as well. I'm just curious. This is the fun of it,
Yeah.
you know? Dive in and work with it. So, but that concludes any other questions or anything before.
One question we have, like I already answered that, but it will be great if you also define that. Like Aditi asked, like where is the key defined? Like the key
Oh,
which we use.
the key, well, the key is defined in um or I should say, let me back up a minute. When a key is defined, you want to keep it in a secured location to where it is not going to be compromised in any way. When we run it locally, we're going to put it in the run configurations on the in runtime. When we're running it here, once it's deployed here, logging into, you can also add it once deployed here in the properties tab. You will add it here as well. So again, it's a sensitive value that you want to protect. And now this is manual. When we deploy manually from Studio up to Cloud Hub, and we're using the interface manually, doing all this manually, you would enter your mule key there for the environment. And then when you want to deploy it to test, you would also add the mule key as it's being, you again manually type it in and then redeploy. But if you are using the pipeline would be configured to access the mule key within the pipeline in a CI/CD environment. And that's more than what we, plan on covering for today, but that's where it would be stored and it would pull the specific key for whatever environment it is, dev, test, prod, and handle it automatically by way of the pipeline. But manually, for those of us that are testing and learning, this is where you would enter the information, your key here, depending on the environment that you're in. Okay.
Then a quick question for this. As you mentioned manually for each field, like the key or username and password, we have to manually put all the fields, right? Is there any way we can have a, we can put a single stuff and we will get all the things masked? Like, is there any way, automate way to, we just put
Well,
one thing
it is
and
masked here. This is what will mask it,
hmm
but you still have to add the data if you are deploying yourself. Like it being masked as I would still, when I deploy this, I still had to add the key here. I
yeah,
still had to type the key.
that is understandable. I'm saying use put mule
Like a
dot key in the secure property
uh,
file. If we have a multiple, the field, then we have to put a multiple fields in the JSON or sorry MuleSoft dot file also, artifacts file
mhm,
also.
mhm. Like have a file that it chooses from. I will find out. I have not done it that way. Like reference a file. I think this is mostly key value pairs here. So I don't know about adding it in a particular, you know, have it all in one place. Is that what you mean? Like for it to be used here?
I'm saying like right now we have only mule key, right? And we have
Right.
put that into the file only. Let's suppose we have other field also like the password or all stuff. And then again, we have to put all these values into the file again, right? So is there
Hmm.
any automate way we can just put one things and and we can, mask any values or we have to manually put all the fields
Mm,
here only?
I have only seen where you add them here. I don't know if there's a generic way of doing all.
Yeah, yeah,
Can find out. I can look into that. But basically, we've just listed the ones here.
right.
I would imagine. I'm just trying to think how we could do that. Um, Noted down. Let me note that down and look into how we could do that if we can. For masking, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Um, because I know that it's key names that it's looking for there that handshakes with the platform, and whether we can have those defined or not, or like all. Not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
We can find out.
Yeah, yeah. And this is what we have right now from MuleSoft only. Anyway, some options which in our mind, and then we enhance it and we put it again, and we work on that, right? So that's
Right.
how we are, learning and update things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And that's the best part of it. Together we can think of these things because it will make your production go a lot faster. It'll make, building things out. And one thing
Yeah.
that we do in our environment is we've created a template that a application template that will have all of that already done for us. In other words, it will inherit it built into each of the applications so that we don't have to redo it each time. Our template also has the base values of things that we use here too. So that's one way that can make it a little more streamlined by using an application template
Mm-hmm. All right.
for your, that's unique for your environment. Yeah.